Summer air travel is expected to be even more of a hellscape than normal. With a lack of staff, compounded with rising prices and continuous delays, disaster is looming ahead.
Here to help us break it down exactly how dire the situation is NewsNation Washington correspondent Evan Lambert. Evan, welcome. And what's going on with summer air travel?
Yeah, thank you for having me. And I'm so sorry to be the bearer of bad news, right? But there are a lot of factors that are coming together to potentially make this situation with air travel this summer pretty hairy, pretty bumpy, if to use a pun, right? So it's a couple factors that are all kind of coming together at the same time. So first, you've got this shortage of air traffic controllers and of pilots. And because of that, the FAA has allowed airlines to cut back some of their summer schedules. And so you have fewer flights. That's likely to drive up prices. So that's one thing that people might be dealing with. But also that demand, right? So coming out of the pandemic, everybody wants to go somewhere. We saw that last summer. That's likely to happen again this summer. So TSA says that it is expecting record screening demand, people going through those checkpoints. So that's something that they are going to be preparing for, but you might expect delays while you're waiting to go through security as well. And then if you are planning any kind of international trip, and even if you don't have one scheduled, this is where you might want to pay attention, right? So the State Department says that its processing times for people either renewing passports or getting new passports are at really an all-time high. It's at 10 to 13 weeks of processing time to get a passport. And that just compares in February, it was at 6 to 9. So, you can see that it is increasing, and that doesn't even count the time for you to send things in and get some of those things back. So it could be a very long time to get a passport. Of course, there are some options to expedite it, but even if you think at some point you might go somewhere internationally, you probably should get a passport now, even if you don't have a trip planned.
Well, I'm definitely feeling very grateful that my passport is up to date, Evan. What is behind the staff shortages that you were mentioning with pilots and flight crews? Is that just leftover from the pandemic? Does that have anything to do with vaccine mandates? What's driving that?
Essentially, it seems to be leftover from the pandemic. So we just really saw that problem get worse and worse, coming off of when really there weren't a lot of flights going anywhere because of the shutdowns and the health procedures, right? So you had a lot of older pilots retiring. And then what's unique to air travel and to pilots and their requirements, they have to retire at age 65. And so there's really not this pipeline of younger pilots in the numbers compared to some of the older pilots. So that's causing that problem as well. And so there had been some talk among airlines and the FAA. There was a proposal or I should say is a proposal to raise the retirement age to 67 instead of 65, but that hasn't been resolved. So you're just kind of seeing those problems continue to happen. With the air traffic controllers, similar thing, carryover from the pandemic. And it really might take months and months to see any of that improve. There is money in President Biden's proposed budget for 2024, $25 billion. And the Transportation Secretary had been talking about this to hire more air traffic controllers to fix some of the technical problems that they've had with the notice to air missions system that caused some problems. If you'll remember earlier in the year, widespread delays and grounding of flights. I believe that was in January. So both of those things, both the air traffic controller shortage and some of these technical updates depend on that money in the 2024 budget. And as you know, it's going to be months before any semblance of a budget passes. So it's something that certainly is going to affect people through the summer, but potentially even longer.
So, Evan, I want to ask you about TSA. Are lines going to be longer? Is it going to be more difficult to get through security because of what's going on in the shortages? Are they suffering just like the airlines in terms of staffing?
I think maybe it's a little bit less for TSA of a staffing problem and more of just this pre-pandemic demand coming back and even maybe surpassing. So the TSA administrator spoke to Bloomberg, I believe it was, just a few days ago and said that they're really predicting what could turn out to be record demand this summer as far as people hopping on flights. So you're going to see that reflected in the length of the lines. So obviously, if you have TSA pre-check, that might save you a little bit of time. If you are considering it, you might want to get it to try to cut off some time in those lines. And the TSA administrator said, look, they are preparing for it. They're going to do their best, but they're kind of just laying out the expectation out there that, people might need to be patient. So you could definitely see those long lines this summer as you're trying to get to your destinations, hopefully for vacation.
So what are some of the other recommendations besides maybe TSA pre-check if people have to fly this summer to make their trip go a little bit more smoothly?
I think it's just setting the expectations. So you might have delays in the flight schedules. You might see higher prices because of the shortages of some of the summer schedules that the airlines are implementing to deal with some of this. And just on the passport front, even if you don't have an international trip scheduled, you might want to think about getting the passport. If you know that you've got somewhere to be at a specific time, you have a trip booked, or you might just want to pay for the expedited handling of the passport. That's directly through the State Department. I believe it's about $60, and that will cut off several weeks to that process. I want to share a story. So there's a friend of mine that I know in TV news. She was getting married at a destination wedding in Mexico, and her mom did not have a passport, was going through the process, and it really came down to the line. She almost missed the wedding, and I was just really invested
my worst
in my
nightmare.
social media posts about this. Was she going to make it? Thank goodness her mom did make it. They actually made a last-ditch effort through their congressman's office to try to get things sped up. So that is something that you can also do as well. If you're facing that deadline where you think you might miss a trip, reach out to your senator or to your representative and see if they can make a phone call and try to get something moving a little bit faster. I'm not even really quite sure how they do that, but that's definitely an option where people can reach out to them. And in this case, it really helped and made my friend's destination wedding.
So how much of this falls on Pete Buttigieg? We saw what happened in, with Southwest and the fallout from that. How much can people kind of point the finger at DOT and at Pete Buttigieg?
Yeah, look, that's a popular talking point, and it's easy to go after the people that are in charge there right now. And so they're just kind of responding to it and saying that they're going to do everything they can. That's why they're pushing the money, this $25 billion that's in President Biden's budget that is supposed to go directly toward travel, to air traffic controllers, to improving some of these systems that we've seen have technical problems and cause grounding of flights and delays. But a lot of it does rest on the airlines themselves as well. So a bit of shared blame here. They've got to deal with their staffing issues, get people hired and trained, and it's, from what I've been reading, really it's just this lack of people that want to be pilots or young pilots. The makeup of most pilots it's kind of a second career for them. So with the pilot shortage specifically, maybe it's a change in culture where we've got to get younger people more interested in doing that at an earlier age. Because we're facing all these problems with this mandated retirement age. And that proposal to extend it to 67 might pass at some point and might help when it comes to that. But just many things that are all just happening at the same time that make for potentially some problems this summer when it comes to traveling and flying.
Well, Evan, let me just say, I hope you get an opportunity to fly out and get a vacation and get some sun and get a tan. Thank you so much. We'll be back with more Rising.